Hello and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Weekly Blitz. My name is Joel Moran and I'm joined by my co-host Jackson McIntyre, and we are here to recap NFL Week 7. How are you doing, Jackson? We had a great week of football.
Yeah, I'm doing good. A lot of injuries this week. NBA is about to start. It's a good time of the year.
Speaking about injuries, we're going to recap the two Monday Night Football games that happened. The Ravens beat the Buccaneers 41-31. Not only did Mike Evans get injured in this game for the Bucs, but Chris Godwin in the fourth quarter, when the Bucs were down 10, really no chance to come back in the game, he gets hurt as well. And these are huge injuries for the Bucs. And I kind of feel like at one point, I understand not giving up on the game, but why do you leave out your best players out there when you don't have any chance to win? And you risk an injury like that when there's so much of the season left? It just didn't feel like the right coaching decision.
Yeah, Godwin's looked bad. And I mean, when it's that late in the game, it's probably smarter to just pull your guys. If it's a 2-score game, like what are we doing?
Yeah, it made no sense. But the highlight of the Ravens game, Lamar Jackson, 281 passing yards, 5 passing touchdowns, 158.1 passer rating, just shy of a perfect passer rating. And did you know that this was his 5th game all-time with 5 passing touchdowns? He is now tied 7th all-time. And the only quarterbacks that have more are Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Dan Marino, Russell Wilson, I want to say it is. And I'm forgetting the other one. I'm missing one more. I'm going to get that information in a bit. But Lamar Jackson is awesome, and it's crazy that he won MVP last year, but you can argue he's better now.
Yeah, and how about Rashad Bateman? I mean, he's actually looked really good this year. Those separation numbers are proving that maybe they do hold some weight after all. So, yeah.
Rashad Bateman, 2 deep passes. The first one where Lamar Jackson was scrambling outside the pocket to evade the blitz, and then the other one where he dropped it on a bucket for Rashad Bateman in the end zone. So I have the list now. The quarterback I was missing was Big Ben. That's who has more 5 touchdown games than Lamar Jackson. All of them have 6. Drew Brees has 11, Tom Brady has 9, and Peyton Manning has 9. But Mahomes, Big Ben, and Marino all have 6. So Lamar Jackson still in historic company. I feel like the main aspect of his game that has gotten better has been his play against the blitz. Last year was average, and this year he has been tested against the blitz. You look at this game, Todd Bowles was sending the house at him for the majority of his dropbacks, and he passed the test with flying colors. I feel like this year he's much more accurate when being blitzed, and he's much more composed, and that is another layer of his game that is improving rapidly, and this Ravens offense just looks unstoppable.
Yeah, no, they look like one of the best teams. It's certainly a contender. I think that you could make a good argument that they might be the favorite right now. I don't think I'd lean that way, but I think there's an argument there for it. Derrick Henry has just fit like a glove into this offense, and Lamar is he's passing the rock really well this year. And if that can translate to the playoffs, unlike in previous years, then I mean, I don't know who's going to stop them.
That's all it is for them. Do you feel like this year is like that year for the Ravens where everything just clicks?
It feels like it. I mean, there's still some kind of underlying issues. The O-line, the defense has had some suspect performances. You hope those things don't rear their heads at the wrong time. But I mean, if they're controlling the clock, controlling the game, and defense is just sufficient, then it certainly could be.
The other Monday Night Football game, which was behind a paywall, was the Cardinals and the Chargers. The Cardinals won 17-15. Now, speak on this game. What did you see?
Justin Herbert needs receivers. I think that the Chargers are just like doing him so dirty right now. Amari Cooper should have been a Charger. They should have done what they needed to do to make that happen, knowing that they were never going to get Devontae, as that was an in-division trade, and you just don't really see those, especially for a player like that in the middle of the season. But I mean, like Deontay Johnson, like, you have to make that happen. There's no separation, and the Bills were in the Chargers situation, and we'll talk about that later. I don't want to spoil it, but Yeah, I mean, they climbed out of it, and here the Chargers are still there, and it was a massive problem tonight. No one was getting open. No one was catching contested balls. Justin Herbert was dropping dime after dime, and the defense just oddly looked like they were not ready for Kyler to scramble. There was like this long touchdown down the left sideline where they just completely blew contain, and the linebacker at 25, I think it was, just did not like respect Kyler's speed to the edge. And it all game long, like it was a weird game of just running the ball. The clock was ticking, and it went so fast. It was 15-14, but it felt like there were a bunch of big offensive plays, or 17-15, something, some weird score like that. But yeah, I mean, it was just one of those Charger games like we've seen them this year, the Harbaugh games, run the ball, and they lost at the end. And yeah, it's you need receivers. You need Justin Herbert to have someone that he can throw to, and I don't think that's going to be DJ Chark when he comes back.
I can't believe he still threw for over 300 yards.
Yeah, no, he looks so good. Yeah,
where are those throws going to? Will Dissly led them in receiving yards. And I thought two things stood out to me in this game. Number one, the Herbert throw to Jalen Reagor encapsulated what this season has been and what Justin Herbert has had to deal with, where he makes a perfect play, a perfect throw, and somehow his receivers just F it up. It's as simple as that. Jalen Reagor catches it. You are within 5 yards of the end zone, and then a defensive back punches the ball out, and the ball rolls into the end zone, so it's now a touchback, and it's the Cardinals' possession. Jalen Reagor, this first time I'm finding out he was on the Chargers. Everybody alongside me found out in a similar way. Nobody knew that Jalen Reagor was on the team.
He's got a way of showing you the team he's on in the worst way possible, doesn't he?
And then the other moment that I thought stood out to me the most was Marvin Harrison Jr. There's clips of him getting open on a double move, and he didn't get thrown the ball. Who knows what was happening to Kyler at that moment. I'm sure there was some pressure on him, because I don't think Kyler just misses that throw, but I'd have to watch it back and see what exactly happened. But I think you look at this receiver class, and you see Brian Thomas Jr. playing well. You see Malik Neighbors playing well, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is not playing well. What's the major issue?
Yeah, I think he's kind of like that sacrificial X, which there was a Twitter stat I saw today. It was something like 1.5, or maybe it was 2 seconds after the snap. It was a list of the depth of like which receivers are the deepest yard, or the most yards beyond the line of scrimmage after like 1.5 or 2 seconds. And he was in the top 5 of that, which kind of speaks to like they're using him to kind of just run off coverage. And those, like, it's a valuable role in an offense, but you don't necessarily want your top 5 pick doing that. I mean, the Jags kind of signed Gabe Davis to do that. Like, that's the type of guy you bring in and you're like, okay, take the top off, and if the defense just botches the coverage, we got you. It's a lower target role up on the line, dealing with a lot of press. I think that there's issues with that right now. They're not moving him around enough. And it feels Cliff Kingsbury, even though he's gone now. And the other receivers are getting much more involvement based on like their pre-snap usage. And I mean, Neighbors moves all around, and Brian Thomas Jr. as well. And they even line him up in the slot a lot. And I mean, I could be wrong, but it's not often that I see Marvin Harrison Jr. in the slot, if at all. And so I think that they're learning how to use him, or maybe they're not learning yet, but they're kind of trying to figure out how to use him best, and they need to get there. It's not Kyler needs more weapons. It's kind of like the Trey McBride underneath special, or like Greg Dortch, like on that out, like the announcers called that a completion every time. I don't know about that one, but the touchdown is what I'm referring to. But yeah, it's weird. You want to see more from him. There was a ball he could have caught tonight. He didn't. He's refined. He can do whatever they ask him to. So I'm looking for that role to grow.
I don't know why teams draft players and decide not to use them in the way that helps the offense the most, because Arizona's offense has been very up and down this year. It's been more down than up. And having Marvin work closer to the ball, where you have better chances of Kyler getting him the football, would be overall better for the offense. Now, we've talked about these rookie receivers all season long, and you know my preference. You know that I like Malik Neighbors. You know I like Brian Thomas Jr. better. And for me, I don't go off the stats as to why I like them better. We have already had conversations, and it's because I like their physical traits more. With that being said, Marvin Harrison Jr., his stats and what he actually is, they're not close at all. Like Marvin Harrison Jr. is a great player that's not being utilized correctly. And once he starts being utilized, we'll start to see that impact. But the Cardinals offense is just not putting him in positions to be successful.
Yeah, no, fully agree with you there.
On to week 7 takeaways. We have a lot of good ones that I'm really interested to talk about. And we had to cut one out. It was about the Seattle Seahawks, but I just want to shout out the Seahawks because I love the Seahawks and they're playing some good football. They finally got some rest after playing 3 games in 10 days, and they laid the beat down on the Atlanta Falcons. But this first topic we're going to talk about, Jared Goff and the Lions, they beat the Vikings 31-29. And has Jared Goff solidified himself as a true MVP candidate, or when watching the film back, do you think it was more of a Lions offensive success and Jared Goff was the point guard distributing it to the right place? What do you think?
Yeah, it's the latter. I mean, he's a good quarterback. I know that the NFL has these very box score stats influenced type voting on MVP awards. So that's a kind of a different topic for what they think it might be. And maybe by that category, he might end up in that. But for me, an MVP is actually the most valuable player. And Jared Goff, I think, has been good this year, but we know who he is. He's got an elite offensive line, he's got good receivers, and he's got an elite scheme. Well, good weapons, I should say. He's got Amon-Ra St. Brown and then 2 really, really good running backs. And Sonic and Knuckles, I guess they're called now. But yeah, I mean, Ben Johnson is like elite, and he's going to be a head coach next year. And like the line gives him so much time under pressure. He is 29th in PFF grade this year. He's got a 52 PFF grade, 0 big time throws to 3 turnover worthy plays. He's got a lowish ADOT of 7.4, so he's not really pushing the ball that much. He does a lot of intermediate work, and he's got some arm talent. He's got more arm talent than like a Brock Purdy or someone like that, but it's not, he doesn't have like elite traits or anything like that. He's got a 2.8% big time throw rate, which is very low. He's got a 3.5% turnover worthy play rate, which is okay, but it's higher than his big time throw rate. He had a really rough first 2 games. He's been better since, but he hasn't been phenomenal. He's been efficient, but he hasn't it's not like he's making these jaw-dropping plays. He's running the offense really well the last 4 games. And I think that's really good. That's valuable. He's the perfect quarterback for this Lions offense. He's worth the money right now as long as the pieces around him stay very good. And that's what I think. He's a good quarterback. I would never consider him an MVP guy.
Now, I know how the comments are going to react to that. I'll give Jared Goff his credit, or
he's really good.
Hater.
Yep.
Just looking at the stats, he completed 88% of his passes against the Vikings, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, 140 passer rating. Last 3 games, 7 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. And the Lions have more touchdowns than he has in completions. And that's been a stat that's been floating around. Now, I will say this. When I was watching the game, I thought what opened up the Lions offense was the Jahmyr Gibbs touchdown run.
Yeah.
After that run happened, the first play the Lions came out with was under center play action. It was a 17-yard completion to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Once I felt like they established a run, and Jahmyr Gibbs averaged 7.7 yards per carry in this game. Once they established a run, you don't get those same exotic looks at the line of scrimmage, because now Brian Flores and the defense, if they want to stunt guys over, it can kind of mess up all the blocking, the gaps where they're supposed to defend, and that can lead to a big-time run. So he wasn't getting as many exotic blitz looks, and I felt like that's what opened up the offense. And the play that stood out to me the most, which they categorized it as under pressure, was the touchdown to Amon-Ra St. Brown, where you have Tim Patrick motioning to chip the edge, and Jared Goff gets some pressure, Penei takes Ivan Pace Jr. out of the play. He like clotheslines him out, and Penei is an excellent player. But Jared Goff sidesteps it. And at first, he's looking to the left. Jameson Williams is on a double move, and that took a little bit too long, so he moved off of it. And Amon-Ra is breaking wide open down the seam, and he just throws a perfect ball to him for a touchdown.
Yeah,
I do think Jared Goff this year has been better against pressure. But at the same time, I understand why people have some hesitancy because of his past, because this is pretty much the only year that he's been really good under pressure. But you can also attribute that to just scheme and having those outs when he is pressured in the offense.
Yeah, and the Vikings were missing Blake Cashman, and on that big run that you were talking about, the Gibbs touchdown, it was the guy filling in, Gruger Hill, something like that, just completely busted his assignment and allowed that to pop out for a big gain. And the Vikings just didn't feel like they were comfortable dropping into coverage all day. They weren't. I think that the main issue was the line, and the offensive line, and they weren't able to get pressure. They weren't getting a lot of wins against that offensive line. Early they were, and then they stopped. And for long stretches, they stopped. And Goff was getting like 3 hitches consistently in the pocket. And they just, Dallas Turner, 17th overall pick, was nowhere to be seen, barely played. He hasn't been playing a whole lot. That's kind of a concern right now. Grenard was a guy who was getting a lot of sacks, but not necessarily a ton of pass rush wins, or at least high level ones. Ivan Pace was playing phenomenal, but there was that roughing the passer penalty that I don't know, but yeah, I mean, they didn't look like they did earlier this year. They were leaky. There was big plays. There was that one where Stephon Gilmore just kind of fell down on that long touchdown. I think that was like, that's like he fell down, like it's fluky, but like it still was a big play. And there were a lot of big plays. The Amon-Ra St. Brown one, the Gibbs one, like there was a lot of other chunk plays as well. A lot of stuff over the middle. And yeah, I think that the Vikings coming out of a bye, that's not how you want to look on defense. But I mean, the line, that's going to be a thing to watch with this team. Like, can they consistently generate pressure? Even again, when they were blitzing, they weren't consistently generating pressure. And when they play these good O-lines, like, can they make the quarterback uncomfortable? Because the whole defense hinges on making the quarterback uncomfortable. So,
yeah, you're absolutely correct. And I thought I like where you're steering this conversation, because I think really what the Lions did was showcase the entire NFL recipe to keep the Vikings defense on their toes. And that recipe is, you got to run the football. That's number one. You have to run the football, and you have to get out of these predictable long down and distances where Brian Flores can just dial up all this crazy stuff to get pressure on your quarterback. So the stats I mentioned earlier, they definitely were against the blitz. I looked up Brett Coleman's tweet is where I got it from, and he said Flores ended up blitzing Goff on 58% of his dropbacks, and the offensive line gave up a pressure rate of 41%. But I looked on NFL Pro, and on NFL Pro, when filtered to only throws under pressure, Goff right now currently is number 1 in passer rating. So, of course, like passer rating, if you get touchdowns when you're under pressure, it's going to inflate it a lot. So, you know, who knows, between PFF and NFL Pro, 2 different sources, you can decipher how you want to look at that stuff. You know, it's whatever, it's a toss-up. But I really want to get into the Packers defense against the Texans offense, because I think, I'm going to say it here right now, I think the Packers are making the Super Bowl. I think they're making it out of the NFC. I think this is the best team in the NFC.
Yeah, and Viking fans are going to hate me, and I know that the Packers lost to the Vikings already, but like if I had to like bet like a house on like one of these teams winning in a neutral playing ground right now, like, and I'm a Viking fan, like I would probably put that house on the Packers to win. I trust Jordan Love more. Like, he will throw a pick or two. He'll throw two turnover worthy plays. Well, if they're caught or not, who knows? But like, they'll be there, and he'll throw a ton of dimes, and those dimes are going to cancel out the turnover worthy plays. And then the defense is just really freaking good. Like, and they've got these guys who are like regression candidates in the positive. Like, they're playing back, like Rashawn Gary, who's had this really slow start, and like he's really good. Like, you expect him to, and he played a pretty solid game this past Sunday, but you expect him to like ascend as the year goes. And like, they're still playing really well. McKinney is like one of the best defensive pickups of the year. I mean, he's just been phenomenal. But I think that like what the defense did this week, shutting down Stroud, the Vikings also shut down Stroud. I know that, Viking fans, but what they did was they were converting pressures into sacks at a really high rate. They had 15 pressures that turned into 4 sacks. That's a 26.7% pressure to sack rate. Really high. That's a lot higher than Stroud's average on the season. And the coverage was forcing Stroud to hold the ball. He averaged 3.27 seconds in his like time to throw metric, which is how long from snap to the ball coming out. That was his highest time to throw of the season, and it was well above his season average of 2.88 seconds. So it was kind of a mesh of the pass rush and the coverage. The coverage was holding up for the pass rush to get home, and when the pass rush was getting home, they were generating sacks. And like there's this one, they were disguising all these different coverages. They do a lot of kind of what Brian Flores does with these like disguised looks, rolling coverages. There was, I tweeted this out, but there's this coverage look where they were showing cover 3. They had a mug look, 7 guys on the line, and they rolled it into like an inverted cover 2. Inverted 2 means one of the deep 2 safeties, or sometimes both, is not just these deep safeties. It's like a corner rolling back, or sometimes even like a slot corner rolling back to play the deep half. Basically just means it's like a different deep half than a standard cover 2 defender. And so they rolled that from the field corner, rolled to play the deep half. And while they did that, they like looped Gary in on a stun and then sent McKinney off the edge, who went completely unblocked. I think it was Dalton Schultz who just was completely lost on the play, and I don't blame him, but he was free for an unblocked sack on Jordan Love, on CJ Stroud. And like, it's things like that are just like, it was poetic. It was poetry. And it looked just like a Brian Flores play call. And when you're mixing scheme with the talent and then the offense, which is dangerous, it is so dangerous. Like, they are really, really good. And I think we're going to see that the second half of the season.
This is the version of the Packers I was expecting. I had them winning the NFC North before the season, and I had them coming out the NFC as well. It was between them and the Lions. I was kind of torn on it, but I trust Jordan Love more than Jared Goff, so that's why I went with the Packers. This is the version of the Packers I expected. Aggressive style defense. Jeff Hafley just now playing to these pass rusher strengths, but a nice little change that I really didn't expect was the simulated pressures, and he's been doing this all season long. And this was something I was looking forward to seeing, because the Packers defense this year has been leaky. They have been a bend, don't break defense. They force a lot of turnovers. So part of me was a bit worried, okay, if the turnovers start to come down, will they be able to still hold up their elite defensive status? But this game, I mean, they held the Texans to 197 yards of total offense. Most of that was rushing yards, 142 yards rushing. Joe Mixon was really let loose this game, and the Packers didn't defend the run well. But I did feel like throughout the game, when they knew that they had to hone in on the run, they really started to stop it. They only let up 55 yards of passing to CJ Stroud in the offense. He had 81, but when you count in sacks and stuff, the loss of yardage, it's 55. The Packers sent 5 or more pass rushers on only 17.2% of CJ Stroud's dropbacks. The lowest blitz percentage in the NFL is 17.1%. Yet the Packers pressure Stroud on 51.7% of his dropbacks. And that was the name of the game. I was watching CJ Stroud, and I'm like, I don't even know where he's supposed to go with this ball, because pressure's coming in his face very quickly. There's nowhere he can go with. Bobby Slowick, very tough look for him. But what you're talking about, the mugged up look, is what fascinated me so much, because it looks like on paper maybe the Packers were winning just straight one-on-ones, but it wasn't that. It was always misdirection. You look at Eric Wilson, there was a play where they had a double A-gap blitz. And
he had a good game, really good game. Yeah.
You have Amari Cooper, who instead of just blitzing right up the A-gap, he shoots to the center. And that allows Eric Wilson to loop around him And then the running back has to decide who to pick up between Cooper and Wilson, because in Edgerrin Cooper knocking the center back, he gets a free lane to the quarterback. So now that running back is not knowing who to pick up, he picks up Edgerrin Cooper. Eric Wilson goes free up the A gap and sacks C.J. Stroud. And there was another sack that happened as well, when it was kind of like they had C.J. Stroud trapped on both sides, and he had nowhere to go. I think it was between Rashawn Gary and Eric Wilson that they just kind of trapped him in the pocket. But it was a lot of extra bodies at the line of scrimmage, and the Texans had no idea where this pressure was coming from. And you can partially blame it on the Texans' protection plan not being prepared enough, because they did struggle with this against the Vikings. But this is also another thing that we are now learning about Jeff Hafley. Like, okay, Jeff Hafley is innovative. Okay, he's more than just a vanilla defensive play caller. He is aggressive, but not only is he aggressive, he is somebody that is going to make a quarterback think for just a split second longer, and then they're going to get you.
Yeah. Yeah, I know they look really dangerous right now. In the NFC North, like, my God, like, it is a dogfight.
Xavier McKinney, I think he was probably the best defensive pickup of the offseason. Him and Evan Williams, they have more interceptions and pass breakups combined this year than they do allowed catches. And when they are targeted, they are allowing a 16.7 passer rating. Evan Williams has played at an all-pro level, and he's just a rookie. And then you have Xavier McKinney, who's playing at an all-pro level. Like, the Packers have talent galore right now. And CJ Stroud on third down versus Green Bay, 12 dropbacks, 2 for 7, 13 yards, 3 sacks, and 2 scrambles. They really put the Texans offense in a chokehold. They were not able to do anything.
Yeah, man. Theo is missing out on this conversation right now. I know he'd love to be in it right now.
No, yeah, the Packers looked awesome. Now, this next topic, the 49ers lost to the Chiefs, Super Bowl rematch. But the most concerning part of everything is that Brandon Ayuk is now out for the year with a knee injury. What's the root of the 49ers' problems? Is it Brock Purdy regressing? Is it the injuries that they have? Because I think that's the first thing I'd point to. You don't have Jawan Jennings. Ayuk goes out. Debo's not there. And then, of course, Purdy is now starting to press a little bit. The 49ers right now, their offense, they're facing a boatload of man coverage, more than they faced last year. And now that Ayuk is gone, who was their man coverage beater, defenses can just suffocate this offense. And now you're asking Purdy, instead of throwing to open windows, throwing into tight windows.
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
Yeah. Obviously, Ayuk, who was not playing very well. I think Purdy's best throw of the day was like this 7 cut to Ayuk, who just dropped it, completely whiffed on it. But I think everyone expected that, like, second half of the season, as we close in on playoffs, Ayuk is going to get right. Like, he's going to be the Ayuk of last year. And now he's just not going to be playing at all. And also Debo, who, like, I don't know what, it was pneumonia. Like, that is scary. Who knows how long that's going to keep him out for. Pneumonia can be very serious. Fluid in his lungs. Hope he gets well. But I think there's some weight stuff too with him this year, where he looks out of shape right now. Jennings as well, as you mentioned, like, these are all weapons. These are all guys who have been good at separating. Debo, it does better as the 2 than the 1, and he was about to be pressed into the 1, but still, like, Pearsall is going to, or Pearsall, however you say it,
Bonnie Bell.
He's thrust into this now, and obviously McCaffrey's still out. And Brock Purdy, he was 3 for 11 on passes, 10 to 19 yards with a pick. There was this one play, again, I highlighted this on Twitter because I thought it was pretty crazy. The defense was in a cover 1 press man, and the deep safety. So they had 2 receivers to the right. One of them was on this quick, like 4 or 5 yard speed out. And then the outside receiver, outside released. And typically when you get an outside releasing outside receiver, that deep middle has to keep his eyes over there and basically be watching that, because that is a prime time for the quarterback to lay the ball over the top. And it was a rollout to the right. They had a backside tight end crossing, and the deep safety basically said, Brock Purdy's arm is not that good. I'm not scared about him throwing this over the top to that outside releasing receiver out there. I'm just going to nail down on this crossing route, which the crossing route was coming open. He had like a step on coverage, and he just completely bailed his deep zone. And like, you don't do that against Josh Allen. You don't do that against Patrick Mahomes, because that's such an easy, just safety comes down, you deep one-on-one, you throw that deep ball, one-on-one coverage, easy every time. And it's like that play from Jordan Love last week that we talked on with Theo on here, where he threw it up as soon as he saw that coverage in his face with no deep safety, he just throws it up, lays it up there, one-on-one coverage, receiver adjusts to the ball. And like, that's the type of stuff you can do against Purdy, which is just a result of like the limiting physical side of his game that is masked when you have Brandon Ayuk getting open, masked when you have Debo turning 10-yard slants into 60-yard gains, masked when you have McCaffrey, who you can scheme into any open space on the field that you want with Kyle Shanahan. And now those things are not there, and it's the machine is like starting to break, like it needs oil, and they don't have oil right now. And Purdy is still a good quarterback, but I think that we're going to see more of those games where those limitations show themselves. And I'm kind of like curious now where how bad is this going to get? And two, if it gets bad, do they still pay him like Tua money? Like, it's funny, Tua money, like that shouldn't mean as much as it does, but it means a lot. But like, what is the answer to if Brock Purdy really regresses here? And I mean, this is the world that we would be in after you pay Brock Purdy Tua money, $60 million or whatever per year. Like, you lose a lot of these skill guys that you can pay when he's not getting paid that. But yeah, I think that this is tough, and the defense has regressed a bit. They're a 3-4 team, and they went from a underperforming team that you felt like was about to start performing to a 3-4 team that feels like they're 3-4 right now.
Yeah, I think they're done. They're not going to make the Super Bowl. They have too many question marks on the defensive side, and now your offense is injured. They desperately need Christian McCaffrey back. That's number one. Jordan Mason has had good raw numbers, but their EPA has dropped off a cliff from last year. It's a below average rushing offense, and last year it was by far and away number one. The stat that is always funny to see from last year is that last year, when Purdy attempted throws at or behind the line of scrimmage, the 49ers were still first in yards per attempt. It just spoke to the playmakers getting things done, and this is something that Chris Sims has said before, and I thought it was an excellent way to put it. Brock Purdy, every couple of games, or every game, I should say, he misses some throws. But the reason why those aren't highlighted like other quarterbacks in much worse situations is because he can miss this 15-yard throw, but the very next play, Kyle Shanahan has a dialed-up 30-yard gain, and everybody just forgets about it.
Yeah.
But now that the margin for error is not as big as it was before, those reps are going to matter. When Trevor Lawrence misses a touchdown, that's often the decider in the game. It's like, okay, you look at that, it's like, okay, you're not going to get that chance that often. And now Brock Purdy is put into that situation, and I think for the 49ers' future, it can be good or bad, because bad in the way that this season, you're not going to live up to that expectation. But if Purdy doesn't perform, because even if you lose Ayuk, if you still have Debo, if you have Kittle, if you get CMC back, if Purdy still is showing signs of regression, it might be a good thing long-term that now they don't have the external pressure to also extend him, because now the fan base and the media is kind of opening their eyes to, okay, maybe this guy isn't number one EPA per play in the league good, historic season good. And I've leaned that way with Brock Purdy. I've changed my tune on him because this year he was playmaking at such a high level. But the issue with that is these last couple of weeks, we see that he is moving around more, but it's at a cost because he's not playing with the same timing and rhythm. And that's been apparent with their red zone offense. Now, if Purdy could combine the two, the playmaking and the timing, now we see a true progression. But it feels like this year, all the things that he's getting better at have come at a cost, and now he's worse at the things that we praise him for.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note, like, we're not saying like he doesn't have anything. Like when Debo's back and when Jennings is back, like those are two legit receivers. Like they're good. Jennings has been separating all year, winning contested balls. Like he's got George Kittle, a top 5 tight end easily still. He's got a rock solid offensive line. I know the right tackle has been an issue, but I mean, it's still a solid unit. He's got one of the best play callers in the game. CMC is on the way back. We'll see. Probably. They just invested a first-round pick in the receiver position. Like there's still things to work with here. He's not working with nothing, and so it shouldn't just be something where like, oh, if Purdy falls off a cliff, we're like, oh, he had nothing out there. No, like he's at least once Debo and Jennings are back, like he's got a good unit still. It's just not this cast of like the Avengers that it has been in the past.
Yeah, against KC, he definitely did have nothing though out there.
Yeah, for sure, perfect. For sure. Yeah, asterisk on like when Debo and Jennings are back, but yeah, no, it was rough this week,
and it showed. There's nobody open, and at the same time, it's like it's nobody open, but Purdy can't also contribute to the problem by throwing dumb passes.
Yeah.
Like the Kittle interception was just a dumb pass. It was just a terrible throw. The second interception, I give him grace for because Ronnie Bell looked like he could have maybe been a wider on that route. Instead, he kind of cut it inside, and I can understand the communication there. But the third interception in the red zone, I mean, that was inexcusable. Even if he doesn't get hit, the receiver was bracketed on both sides. Like that was going to be a televised pick regardless. So he can't also make the problem worse. And that was a winnable game. And his decisions led to them losing points in that ball game. So I also can't just, devoid him of blame. But I'm looking at these stats. Brock Purdy ranks dead last of 31 qualifying quarterbacks in passer rating versus man coverage this year. Against zone coverage, he's third best in the NFL. And the 49ers last year were number 1 in man coverage versus man coverage. And this year they're 31st. And the 49ers this year are one of the worst teams at generating yak. So those are things that have been a staple of Shanahan's offense that just this year, it's just not there. Now, the Buffalo Bills, they got some receiver help with Amari Cooper. And, man, does this change a lot of things for the Bills offense. Now, Amari Cooper only played 19 snaps, 4 receptions, 66 yards, 1 touchdown. And of those 19, half of them were probably like run plays. Yeah. Amari Cooper made a big-time impact. And I think what is so cool is that now we get to see Josh Allen not think the game so much. It's like, okay, this is my first read. I trust Amari to win. Unless the coverage tells me to go elsewhere, this is where I'm going because I know I can trust him to win outside. Where before Amari came to the offense, Josh Allen is kind of
who's going to get open this play.
Yes, it has to go through every single read to see if somebody breaks open. It has to be a perfect play design. With Amari Cooper, there's just less thinking involved. There's more margin for error, and he had an awesome debut.
Yeah. I think that part of what forced this trade is Kincaid's kind of lack of development. I mean, he's been okay. He's made some plays. He hasn't been terrible, but I think that the Bills would have hoped he was further along at this point in year 2 now than he is. But yeah, the Bills now have a legit separator, not just a man separator either. He did beat. There was a cover 0 today or yesterday where he. The route where he looks over at Keon Coleman for like, what do I do? And Coleman kind of tells him, break it in. And so he just runs up the seam, little outside step, explodes off that left foot inside and just completely steals inside leverage off the corner or the safety. And yeah, it was a great ball from Josh Allen, but like just the reliability there for a receiver to rip up the seam, plan out left, explode inside and win. Like you could tell Josh Allen like trusted him on that. And I haven't seen that since Diggs, first half of last season. But I think that this is going to, and I know Keon Coleman just had a big game, but ironically, all of his catches were with Amari Cooper not on the field. But so this game was not a case of Amari opening things up for Keon. But I do think that is going to happen as we go forward because Keon is pretty good. Like he's been getting open. He's been making plays after the catch. He's strong. He's got some juice. And I didn't think he had as much juice as he's had after the catch, but I mean, it's there, and I think that we're going to see a lot more of that now. I think his second half is going to be second half of the season is going to be much better than his first half of the season was or has been, and yeah, I think that with Amari Cooper, there was also a big catch against zone where he settled into the zone between like the linebacker and then I think it was a corner on the outside, and he kind of drifted like just to settle into this window. And like as you pointed out earlier off camera, it was a great throw from Josh Allen. He put it away from coverage, but this little subtle shift that Amari did, there was that veteran like I know how to beat zone coverage. I've been doing this since Alabama, where he just slides over and now this window is there and Josh Allen has the arm talent to put the ball into that window. Like those throws are there too. And it was funny that Amari Cooper started out with his first target was a drop, but yeah, it was all good after that. But yeah, I think that this is mainly a big ceiling raiser for the Bills. Like it's hard to win in playoffs when you don't have a number one receiver who can get open. And like now they do. I think Amari Cooper can be that guy.
Yeah, I was watching the film and the first play when it was a drop, I was like, see?
Yeah.
Guy. And yeah, a couple of plays after that, it's just like, oh, catch. Oh, wow. Okay. No,
Amari drops.
Yeah, Amari still is really good. No, he's amazing. And you know what's kind of pissed me off? It's been the narrative that it's like, oh, Josh Allen played 6 games without a wide receiver number one, and he couldn't handle it. Oh, Lamar Jackson, he did it without one of these guys for the majority of his career. And yeah, that's true, to a degree, but the front office doesn't want to fail Josh Allen, and the Ravens front office has been failing Lamar Jackson in that aspect. And I think it should be celebrated that the Bills front office pulled the trigger instead of bashing Josh Allen, getting another weapon, because this year, even before the Amari Cooper trade, he had 10 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. And I know he lost to the Texans and he lost to the Ravens, but Josh Allen was playing elite level football before this trade. This was just a trade to win in the playoffs. Josh Allen and the Bills, they would have been fine in the regular season.
Yeah, I think it's like one of the funniest like Twitter arguments when people try to say like, oh, like so-and-so doesn't need that. Like this player, he doesn't have weapons, but it's like, we're not just trying to be the best struggling team. Like front offices are trying to be good. They're not trying to fight down to the level of a different GM who's failed at providing weapons for the quarterback and then show that's not what we're doing here. So yeah,
it makes no sense. But yeah, Josh Allen, I think he's happy. He has another receiver. And Keon Coleman, I'm really interested in that development because we talked about this with the Marvin Harrison Jr., how he's been used as a sacrificial X. I think Keon Coleman would benefit if he wasn't used so much in that role with the Bills, because I think he's best when he's not getting pressed at the line and when he has space to work and now get yards after the catch. That's where I feel like it's going to be best. And maybe Amari Cooper now plays that role, and you can interchange them and stuff. So I think it can open up the offense. Now on to RBIS, the top scorers of the week. Who were they?
Yeah, so Jahmyr Gibbs, we already talked about him a bit, but he had an 8.8. He had a 0.53 forced missed tackle rate, which is really, really high. He had a 4.9 yards after contact, really, really high. And he also had a great 2.8 yards before contact. So he was like, that just speaks to the Detroit offensive line and how great they are. But he was getting big holes, and then he was doing a lot with those big holes. Josh Jacobs, another guy, 8.4 RBIS, had a 0.42 missed tackle force rate, 4.9 yards after contact, and a below average 1.4 yards before contact. So he was not getting as big holes as Gibbs was, but he was doing a lot with that. And then Najee, who is coming off back-to-back monster games, like maybe the 2 best games of his career. I think that he's been running with this newfound kind of physicality. I don't want to say newfound because he's always been super physical, but like it feels like he's been extra violent. And it's, to me, I look at that and I'm like, not sustainable. That's like what I'm like, he's with the extra force he's running out right now. Like I'm just waiting for an injury, but I mean, he's been playing really well, and he has run like that for a while, and he's been relatively healthy throughout his career. So maybe he doesn't, but he had a 6.5 RBIS, a 0.38 missed tackle force rate, 3.4 yards after contact, pretty good, and a 1.5 yards before contact, a little bit below average. And then bad, Alvin Kamara. And he perennially, his almost every week, had a bad RBIS score. Even early in the season when everyone was going crazy about all these touchdowns and big lines he was posting, he was consistently, like early in the year, he was having massive yards before contact rates. Like they were opening big holes for him. He was forcing some missed tackles, not a lot, below average, but some. He was getting some yards after contact, again, below average, but this week he did not force a single missed tackle, so he had a 0 forced missed tackle rate, 1.7 yards after contact, well below average, and he had a negative 0.3 yards before contact. And so that's kind of what we were watching, was when that yards before contact number drops, like these are the type of games we get from him where he does absolutely nothing. I think he had like 10 yards or something. I don't have the stat line in front of me, but it was bad. And that's what happens when you don't force a lot of missed tackles, you don't get a lot of yards after contact, and then you stop getting yards before contact. That's what happens. And that's what RBIS kind of alludes to, is it shows you those guys of like, hey, these guys are doing good, but that's because they're getting 3 yards before contact, 2.5 yards before contact. And if you don't believe in that offensive line, then you probably don't believe that they're going to continue getting that. So you should expect regression. Another guy, and it was his first game back, I hate to do him like this, one of the best running backs ever, but Nick Chubb, didn't have a lot of carries. It's his first game back. We'll see if he can get back to where he's physically, but he had a 0.09 forced missed tackle rate, 1.7 yards after contact, and 0.3 yards before contact. I just realized I actually did not write down his RBIS score, but it was one of the lowest. So
yeah, now we're seeing just a byproduct of just how meaningful offensive line play is.
Yeah,
the Saints have not been able to run the ball, and I think that's the biggest reason why they are where they are in their season. The defense is playing terrible as well. It's just a bad football team, and I think injuries really derailed their season. And then with Nick Chubb, first game back, but the Browns have been a mess all season long.
Yeah,
the offensive line has been terrible. They're playing backups, and really this is just not a good offense. Even outside the quarterback, who Deshaun Watson has been terrible, but I spoke on this last week that the Browns just have so many problems that exist within their offensive infrastructure, and now you lose Amari Cooper too. I'll be very surprised if Nick Chubb is actually...
Who else did they lose? Who else did the Browns lose?
Offensively? Oh, they lost Deshaun Watson too.
Yeah.
So we'll see if the offense...
Did they lose him, or is that addition by subtraction? We'll see.
It might be the latter at this point in time. Rookie spotlight, Drake Maye. Drake Maye completed 70% of his passes, 276 yards, 2 touchdowns, 109.7 pass rating against the Jaguars. And first 2 drives, you're thinking, oh, wow, this is upset alert city. The Patriots score on the first 2 drives. It's 10-0, I believe, against the Jaguars. And then after that, they could do absolutely nothing. I mean, it was crazy. I was like, where the hell did this offense go after the first 2 drives? Drake Maye played another good game. I will say and be fair that he did have like 2 to 3 turnover-worthy plays in that. But right now, we're just looking for the flashes in Drake Maye. I think he's shown them.
Yeah. You can always expect those turnover-worthy plays, at least for the foreseeable future in that offense with all of the issues he's facing. He's also just a quarterback who that was one of the things he needs to improve is look to lower those turnover-worthy play number. And but yeah, he's looked really good. He was accurate on time. He's got these tighter, kind of what you were talking about with Brock Purdy, where these throws, they're tighter windows, like almost every time. Like he doesn't get these scheme. The scheme sucks too. Like it's very basic and vanilla, and the scheme's doing no favors. The offensive line is not doing any like everything is built for failure for Drake Maye, and he's playing well. He's reading defenses. He's been in rhythm. He's throwing hot. There was this touchdown he threw to Hasty where they sent 2 off the right side, and insane defensive thing they tried to do. So they motioned Hasty to offset to the right side and shotgun. they blitzed from that same side that they motioned Hasty to in the shotgun look, and they tried to have the backside edge defender loop around and take Hasty out to the flat, like brain dead defensive play call. But whatever, Maye read it, and it was he just checked it down. It was just a little dump off, but he saw the blitz. He threw it off his back foot, and he beat the blitz. And I think that, like, I was so triggered when Gerard Mayo, Dan Orlovsky, I don't want to do him dirty if he didn't, but I think Bill Belichick said this as well at some point. But where they were cherry picking plays, easy passes that Drake Maye missed, and there were too many of them. Like, sure, but that's the determining factor for a quarterback being ready. Isn't like, does he miss a 5-yard out too often? Like, yeah, you want him to hit that. It's a throw that he should be hitting, and he does regularly hit that. There's some bad misses here and there, just like every quarterback misses. But like, he reads defenses really well. He reads leverage. He throws with timing, anticipation. He maneuvers in the pocket really well. He throws hot. Like, just because he's got a little bit of some air and accuracy, like the majority of quarterbacks in the league do, if not every single quarterback in the league, like, we shouldn't be labeling him. Like, Dan Orlovsky said something like he needs to sit for 2 years, which is just insane. Like, if you watched his tape, he looked ready. It was just some accuracy things that he needs to work on, a little lower the turnover where the play is a little bit, but these are normal things. He's ready. And yeah, that was just a trigger for me, but like, they should have learned that now after 2 weeks of Drake Maye's tape and seeing what he's been doing with this terrible scenario he's in. But yeah, I feel like I still want to say, like last week I said I was leaning towards saying that Drake Maye, I would still take him because I had him pre-draft over Jaden Daniels, and there was nothing Drake Maye did to make me say he shouldn't be, even though Jaden Daniels did a lot. I thought there was a gap between them in my draft board, and I still want to say that, like, by a hair, like, I still would take Maye at that spot. So I think he's Justin Herbert, basically.
And we saw the Commanders with Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, he looked good. Marcus Mariota looked good. Yeah, this was the best he's played since Oregon. Maybe I'm sure there was a couple of Tennessee games, but
there
yeah,
definitely is. Yeah.
But
no, he played really well. Drake Maye, I think, is going to be fine. Gerard Mayo, his comments have been terrible. He called the team soft. Said they're playing soft, but
Belichick
seems soft.
Did you see what Belichick said about that?
Yeah, I did, and that just is a slap in the face.
Oh.
I mean, it kind of shows how Bill Belichick is kind of still bitter about not being in New England and being the guy for the job, but he's also kind of taking a shot at Gerard Mayo. Like, hey, listen, I coached this team better than you. I don't think they're soft. I think that's disrespectful. So I think the Patriots probably have to figure out that head coaching spot after the season, because Gerard Mayo hasn't really shown you any flashes to this point that he is the guy. But yeah, Drake Maye was pretty good. I like Drake Maye a lot, and I think he's going to be awesome. I just hope that Ben Johnson doesn't decide to choose the Patriots over the Jets, but he just might.
He just might. I think he's going to want that young quarterback. And I mean, Drake Maye looks to be that guy. But just for the viewer, what Bill Belichick said was Gerard Mayo called them soft, and Bill Belichick basically in a nutshell said, hey, these guys were a great run defense unit last year. They re-signed most of the same guys. Like, this is the same unit essentially. They're not soft. it's wow. Yeah.
Not Bill Belichick cherry picking though. They don't have Christian Barmore, who Belichick had last year.
There is some salt. There was some salt for sure.
There is. Now we're gonna start doing this every week on the last segment of the show. It's a segment called Cross Out Teams, and we're basically crossing out teams that we feel like are out of playoff contention in the AFC and the NFC. Now we can start with the AFC. I have the Patriots as a cross-off team. I think that was my first cross-off. How about you?
Patriots. Yeah. I mean, they're done. They're fun though. I hope they get a big win, like over a good team, and Drake Maye just balls out. But yeah, they're out.
That's their only hope. I have the Titans as a cross-off team, the Browns, and the Raiders.
Those are the exact four that I've got, and then I've got 3 in the NFC. And
okay.
I've got the Giants.
NFC. Okay, I have them too.
I've got the Saints. That's the spiciest one I think I've got, but I'm ready to call it. I mean, Shaheed's out. I think they were winning early with like Shaheed was winning deep so often, and it really opened up so much underneath. And also their defense has just regressed like crazy. And the offense has become more one-dimensional. The defense is the bottom half of the league defense at this point. And Derek Carr is probably not going to look like he did the first 2 weeks. So, yeah, I'm ready to say they're done at 2-5, I think.
I think it's over, too. They signed MVS to be the Shaheed replacement.
Oh, yeah. Good luck.
Done, though. They just have too many injuries, and that's really the reason why I think they're done.
How many times has MVS been signed as like the deep ball replacement or like the guy to come in to be that deep threat? The Chiefs, where'd he go after?
He went
like the Bills, like, and the Saints now, and he's never done it. Like he's not that guy, but he can run fast and he's kind of big. So
the three you have in the NFC are the Giants, Saints, and Panthers.
Yeah.
And that's where you stopped.
Yeah, there was a couple of teams that I was like debating, and I was like, hey, one more week. Yeah,
I felt that way about the Rams.
Yeah, one more week. I'm actually going to that game on Thursday at SoFi. Yeah, but I think that if the Vikings win that game at 2-5, Cooper out. I mean, is Cooper on the trade block? Is Stafford on the trade block? Probably. He should be. Like, you don't want to just burn a season right now at this point. Like, I think it's time. They got their Super Bowl. The trade was worth it. Know when it's time to wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm looking at the NFC teams. I think the Rams, Cardinals, those are the two teams that I was thinking about, but the Cardinals just won tonight, so I can't have them out. They're 3-4, and quietly, they can compete for the division. They're 2-0 against the NFC West right now. Their schedule lightens up in the second half of the year. But you're right. I think the Rams get one more week. I'd even say 2 more weeks, because I think going up against the Vikings, Thursday Night Football, a tough game. I think they did arrest Cooper Kupp to play in this game. I don't know, man. The Vikings look really good, but if the Rams can run on them, if they can pass efficiently, there's a scenario where they're just like, listen, this is our season. We have to win, and they come out with the win. But the Vikings have just been too good. And the AFC, we mentioned the Raiders, Browns, Titans, and Patriots, all cross-off teams. I have one more.
Can I guess?
Yeah.
Is it Miami?
It is not.
Okay, who is it?
It's the Jaguars.
Okay.
And it's the Jaguars because I don't think it's officially over. I understand if you give them one more week, but looking at their schedule, they face the Packers, the Eagles, the Vikings, the Lions, and then the Texans. Those are their next 5 games. So I think there's 2 losses at least in the next 5 weeks. So I'm kind of projecting here that it's pretty much over for them.
Yeah, and I guess looking at the Dolphins' schedule, it's on the easier side here. I was debating them just because they should be good-ish with Tua back, but they're not that good of a team. Like, they're not one of those. They're not like if the Bills had Josh Allen out for a few games and then Josh Allen comes back at 2-4 and you're like, oh, playoffs. Like, there's still a lot of issues with that team, even with Tua there, and who knows what happens with Tua. I think he should be playing with a Guardian cap. I don't know why on earth he wouldn't be. I know there's not like a lot of data on them, but if it even could help, like, he should be taking any avenue, like the LaMelo Ball wearing ankle bracelets things, just to try to prevent an injury. Like, there's things that you should do just to be safe. And yeah, but
looking at the Dolphins offense, I feel like people in their minds are thinking about the best version of Miami and how their offense looked with Tua.
Yeah.
And not what has been the result the last 10-ish games that we've seen them. Because last year, towards the second half of the season, their offense dropped off a cliff. In the playoffs, it didn't look good. And then you look at this season, week 1 versus the Jaguars, who now, with better data, we know are one of the worst defenses in football. I mean, the Jaguars pretty much locked them down in the entire first half, and then they came out surging in the second half, but they faced the Bills, and the Bills locked them down.
Yeah, he was terrible. Tua was awful against the Bills, yeah.
He was bad, so I don't think that just getting Tua is this magic fix. The offensive line is still not that good. they can't really run the ball right now. Their
Yeah.
defense has been playing solid, but
Yeah, the defense has kept them in games, but they played like Anthony Richardson, who's imploding worse and worse every snap he takes out there right now. So
for me, I'm not looking at the Dolphins like, oh yeah, they're Tua Tagovailoa away from being a top 5 offense again. Like, I think there were clearly some signs of regression that we should probably be paying more attention to than people actually are.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But those are my cross-off teams. I'm going to give the Jets one more week, and they'll beat the Patriots next week, I'm hoping, and then we'll see. Just one week at a time right now.
Yeah.
With the Jets.
A-Rod looked good, man. I think he looked good. I know he threw that bad pick. He threw that bad pick. Devontae, I think, needs some time. There were some bad plays, but I like what I'm seeing from his arm still. I think he's got a lot of juice in that arm, and we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Weekly Blitz Week 7 recap. Rookie Spotlight with Drake Maye, and we recapped Monday Night Football and also gave you guys our cross-off teams that we think are out of playoff contention. That's going to do it for us. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys next time.